Hey guys, this is Nia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be showing you guys how to paint poppies again. This is part 2, which is the top view of the poppies. If you haven't checked out part 1, I will link it down below and at the end of the video. If you guys want to give this painting a go, I really suggest to start from part 1, which is the side view, because I find it to be less tricky to do than this one. So let's begin with the tutorial. As usual, I always start out by drawing the flower out with pencil first, so you get a fair idea of the simplest form. Here I'm just drawing out some of the petals. I draw out my petals quite freely so it simulates the thin and fine petals of poppies. Remember that the top will always be wider than the bottom of the petal, which will bunch up together on the bottom of the flower. This is just the basic structure of any other petals. Then I drew a top view of the flower, which is made out of a circle in the center and surrounded by petals. The petals actually overlap, but as I would simplify for the actual painting, I just drew one layer of the petals. This is just so you can remind yourself the basic shape of a flat flower. First thing I did was fairly easy angles, which is close to the bird's eye view, but I just tilted slightly so the silhouette isn't a perfect circle but more of an oval. If you do harder, more extreme angles straight away, you might get confused by the structure of the petals because some of them will be foreshortened. So just try out the top view with slight tilts first. Once you are happy with those angles, try tilting it a little bit more to the side so you get to see a little bit more of the back of the petals, which are the foreshortened petals that I was talking about before. And to summarize, the silhouette looks a little bit like a bowl or a plate shape. So if you find it a bit tricky to draw the petals, stick with drawing out bowl-shaped silhouettes in different angles first. You can even hold out a bowl as reference and place something round in the middle of the bowl or the plate and move it around in different angles if it's a little bit hard for you to imagine. If you've watched part 1 of this video, I mentioned that you have to keep all the shapes nice and organic with no hard edges. This is still very much applicable. Try to not flatten the top of the flowers. Instead, remember the rounded oval shape. This is why drawing out the silhouette first is a very useful step if you find it hard to imagine it straight away. The stem and buds are exactly the same as the part 1 of the tutorial, so I won't go over it again with too much detail. Just keep repeating this step over and over again until you are comfortable with the views from different angles, because you do have to have this in your mind first before painting it straight without outlines. I'm just going to show you how I practice a little bit, and after that we'll get to the colors. Okay, so as I mentioned in part 1, poppies come in a variety of different colors. So this time I'm going to pick a dark purple or a little bit of a burgundy color. So the colors that I'm going to use and mix up are purple with a little bit of rose and then mixed with a little bit of black. Just these 3 colors for the flower petals, and I'm just going to leave out the proportions so each flower can come out a little bit different. Maybe some of them are a little bit more purple or a little bit more rose or darker or lighter. It just creates a really nice variety. For the stem, I'm using the same colors as part 1, which are olive green and olive green with a touch of lemon yellow for the lighter tint. Next, with the colors that I have chosen, I'm just going to practice painting on the drawings that we've made, leaving a little bit of negative space every now and then between petals to create some space. When and if your paint puddles up, don't worry about it. If you like the color, just leave it to dry. If it's a mistake, you can just blot it down with some tissue paper to erase it while it's still very wet. Keep in mind the foreshortened petals, not to pull your brush strokes too long so you don't distort the structure of the angle. For the pollen in the middle, I used thick consistency black paint, and using the very tip of my brush, I paint tiny dots. Take note on how wet your paint on the petals are. I like to pleat out the center a little bit, so I make sure that the petals are still a little bit damp, so it softens the black. But if you prefer something with a bit more contrast, you can leave the petals until it's really dry so you can make that distinction. The next one, I'm going to show you a lighter version. So what I do is I mix more water into the paint so I can create a lighter color. This time I'm also using the silhouette only, not the fully drawn flowers, so you can start breaking down the shapes in your mind a little bit more rather than if you were to do it completely with the outline. If your paint is too light, what I like to do is incorporate some wet on wet technique. So I use a thicker consistency of paint and I just dot it lightly using the very tip of my brush around the center and working it with a clean brush so I can fix the placing a little bit more. And then finally for the pollen, I use the exact same technique as I did before. Just be careful not to paint the pollen while your paint is still really puddling wet. If it is, the black paint will spread much faster and way further, covering the whole puddle in black. So it's just a thought. By now you should get the idea that the petals should all be facing towards the center of the flower. If you're still unsure, keep painting on the sketches that you have done. If you're happy and comfortable already with the strokes, you can start trying to paint straight without any help of the outline. Again, try all the different angles you can think of until you're comfortable with painting the flowers. Also try different consistencies of paint, so lighter and darker, or mixing a little bit more rose or a little bit more purple or a little bit more black into the color that you've picked, so you create different varieties of flowers. Then we can move on to the stems and buds, which are very easy and straightforward to do. Using the colors on the swatches, just paint fine straight line, imagining that the stem starts right at the bottom center of each flower and then pulling it down carefully with the tip of your brush. I also like to intentionally mix a bit of the flower color into the greens to create something of a warmer green. Incorporating the color of the flower also brings the painting together nicer as a whole. The buds are exactly the same as part 1. Remember where the ovals are facing and where the stem starts from the oval. Do not make the oval horizontal and making the stem start right in the middle of the oval, because that would look a little bit awkward. Yeah, so that's it for this one. I will leave a real-time painting of the poppies. Hopefully this way you will get a better understanding of my thinking process and how the paint dries. There is really no rush. I took my time painting this and I followed the exact same procedure as part 1, where I discussed about the contrast of the background and foreground and things. So again, if you haven't checked part 1, be sure to do it. I'll leave you guys to it and I'll see you at the end of the video. nearing the end of the video. For this one, I mixed the angles of the side view and the top view of the flowers to give it a little bit more movement. Remember, you are free to use any color that you want, but I quite like this dark color combination. Yeah, so I hope you guys learned something new from this video as well as the previous one. If you have any questions, please leave it down below and I'll try to answer it as best as I can. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe give this a go for yourself. If you do, be sure to let me know how it went. I'd really love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and I'll see you at the next video. Bye!